Hi everyone, it's Baileywiki, and here is your 2-minute overview of the latest release. It's November 2025, and you'll want to watch this just a couple of minutes and then decide which parts you want to dive deeper into through the chapters. So first up, based on a extensive exercise I completed where I actually got direct feedback from a bunch of my community members. We're going to be introducing more things, but we've introduced here a new resource to users of Baileywiki content. It's this new tab that will show up on your sidebar with this handy little Baileywiki logo. And inside, you'll get access to a few helpful resources. So jump to that timestamp to get the details. And for those of you who don't know how to access my content, all of these release videos, every one of them cover how to do it. It's the very first timestamp after this intro. So just jump to the next timestamp for details, but essentially everything is here under your mass edit button. As for the content this month, the 2D stuff is all about Catacombs of the Dead. It's a dungeon-themed release, super atmospheric, with actually a new approach to animated doors that I think that you'll like. So lots of large rooms, hallways, and components for making your own catacomb maps with these modular pieces. Of course, there are ready-made maps with all of these pieces already used. And we also have a bunch of dead bodies and blood just to add to it. For the 3D release, Swift and Lettuce have produced some pretty spectacular maps, and as always, these are perfectly editable by you. So you can use them as a starting point or just out of the box. And there's lots of new ruins assets that you'll get a bunch of mileage out of these. It's just like if you had a big physical set of plastic pieces and you could make maps with all those. It feels a lot like that. These are those kinds of pieces. And of course, Dungeondraft tiers get all the new catacombs and dead bodies and blood assets for making all your maps from scratch. So that's the overview. Let's jump into the details, starting with how to find all the content. Okay, so first up, where you find stuff, as always, once you have Mass Edit installed, assuming all of the Baileywiki modules are installed, you just go over here and click on Mass Edit Presets, and you have access to everything here. All of the 2D assets and scenes, and then if you have access to it, 3D assets and scenes. You can also just open up your normal Mass Edit browser that's got everything in here. I won't go through a tutorial on that, but if you want to see all the new assets, just open up the asset browser. They're always here in the new category, or you can look up the releases by date, right? Here's everything from November, but you can look up last month, and you can look up older content. Same thing with the scenes. Just open it up. All your newest scenes will always appear here. And then you can look up past releases based on date. And then you can go through the category browser and find other things that you like. Okay, so this new Baileywiki tab, if you have Nuts and Bolts updated, you'll have this new tab. It's the Baileywiki tab. And it's got a couple of things. First off, it's going to show you all of the Baileywiki modules that you have installed and their versions. This is important. If you ever need help, you can come to my Discord and say, hey, I've got these versions, and you can just tell us. You will also eventually see the browser buttons here. I don't have that implemented just yet in this world, but these same browser buttons here, we'll also put them over here just so you have multiple places to find them. And then you have these utility macros. And these, if you hover over them, you can see what they do and what they're for. These are the macros that I think that you will use the most often. And so when you are making maps or working with Baileywiki content, you're going to end up using these utilities a lot. They used to be buried inside of the Nuts and Bolts compendium. They are still there if you ever need to find them, but this just elevates the most important macros up to the top, right? Optimizing a scene lets you build scenes with all of our different modular pieces and then turn them into one single efficient WebP file. It does require that you have Ripper's media optimizer, so it is a premium thing. It's totally up to you, but if you support Ripper, it's a really nice function that you can leverage with our stuff as well. Deleting token magic effects filters just lets you select any tile or token and delete any filters that are on it. Likewise, the FX filters let you just simply select anything and you can add a filter to it. So any of our filters, our custom filters, you can add, and then you have some quick access utilities to delete or edit a filter. Fit tile to scene is going to let you use diorama tiles and other things to fit the entire tile to the scene dimensions that you've got. Sometimes you'll want to re-import your Baileywiki token magic effects presets. That's what this lets you do. And then edit token magic effects value. So if you have a filter applied to something like this I just applied a drop shadow. You can't see it on the black background. If I click this open, now I can adjust the drop shadow parameters. And then the last thing is we are showing tutorials now. So you can actually click in here and see tutorials on how to do stuff. So just click load PDF and you will get a step-by-step, click-by-click tutorial on how to do stuff. Right now, we've just got creating scenes with diorama tiles, creating your first prefab, and then creating scenes with unlimited terrain spawners. Let me know in the comments what other tutorials that you would like, but our goal is to get the information directly into Foundry for you. So if you ever have questions, you can come in here, you can look at it, you can mark it as red, or if you want to change it, you can. We may update these over time, and there will be more tutorials over time. So I highly recommend you come in here if you haven't done some of these things, and this will give you a good starting point that's current, that you don't have to go hunting for, that will let you know how to use some of the more advanced content. Okay, so before we get into the Catacomb stuff, I did put some things in here that I just thought were helpful. First of all, we have a lot of these dead bodies. These are all dead soldiers, like archers, fighters, and knights. And you can just, they're all in a brush. So, you can just look up like dead bodies and you'll find all these. And you can add them all to a brush, for example. These themselves are brushes. So they've got all of the assets underneath. And you can just like spam dead bodies around. So if we change the rotation, we can just spam dead bodies around. And it's super delightful if, you're into that kind of thing. Same thing with the blood here. You've got blood spatter that you can speckle around. And then I created some more perspective bookshelves. These are a little bit more perspective. So meaning they're looking more top down. They still look like bookshelves, but these are easier to use in more types of maps. The other bookshelves were so much perspective that you could only use them at the very edge of maps. So you might get some mileage out of these. So just some added stuff to give you guys some things that you'll use a lot. Getting into the release itself, we've got the Catacomb Rooms. Now, these are very large rooms, right? Just to give you an idea of scale, right? Here's, here's one player, one token. So these rooms have lights built into them. So if we turn the lights down, we'll be able to see the atmosphere of the rooms. They all have, walls. And a lot of them have overhead tiles for the doors. And these tiles, you can right click if you have multi-face tiles enabled, and you can actually change these to different other kinds of tiles. You might find you do that one or these a lot. So check these out. These are all really great rooms, and they're starting points where this whole set, if you just look up Catacombs, the whole set, you can drop things into these and you can transform these rooms like really quickly, right? So if we look up Catacomb, and we want to put a blood pit in the middle of one of these things. And I can press Control Shift and cycle through these. Well, now I've got a blood pit in the middle. I can have staircases. I can have pots, all kinds of things. These decoration pieces are super interesting and helpful. So you can just really change these in lots of interesting ways just by, look, I've just created, texture here where there wasn't texture before. So I recommend playing with all this stuff, and I'll show you some of the pieces that you can use. But it also comes with a bunch of hallways. So these hallways, if I like a catacomb hall, for example, I can grab any of these hallways, just double click that, and I can put them into maps, and they're super easy to use. These hallways all come with lights and walls and everything else that you need. And they also come with overhead tiles for the doors. So for example, here's a door. Let me turn the lights up so you can see this easier. So we've got this overhead tile that is covering a door. And the reason we do that is because all these doors are actually animated. So I'm using a different approach to animated doors than you saw in my last video. This is sort of a second way to do them. But essentially, it gives you the ability to add all of these things to a scene, and you just get animated doors built in, which I find totally delightful. And one more thing about these animated doors, you can actually, they stand alone as a prop. So if we want to put an animated door right here, for example, you just look up Catacomb door and you can drag it out. I just double clicked it, right? This is just a preset, and I can hold down Alt and make it bigger or smaller to fit a particular area, but you just drop it in and you've got an instant animated door, right? I can grab it again, press Shift D and rotate it with the Shift key. That's an easy way to flip it around, or you can just change the door settings to flip it around. Pretty cool, right? So you can really use these on any map. And because they're made, if you can see the thumbnail here, they're made with, a kind of a color agnostic tile. You can really turn them into any color that you want to match, whatever scene that you're building on. And they even have other alternative doors underneath them. So if you want like a different variety, you can, but this one should be pretty usable in most maps. You have other ones of these rooms that have some specialty doors. For example, these gates that are going into these crypts. By the way, you can change all these bodies out for something else, like a tomb or something. But if you click these, the gates will disappear. You'll hear the sound of the gate opening. So these are just things built in to make it easy for you to just drop these into a scene. A lot of these pieces are simply that. They're just pieces, right? So if I held down Control-Shift, I can move this around, and I can even delete it, and I can put something else in its place. So kind of a starting point for you, but certainly giving you all the freedom to be able to add things to these maps as you like. Now we've got all of these stairs, rooms, and platforms. These are all pieces that are just easy to drop in and add to each other, and they just layer on top of each other, and it gives you the ability to expand whatever room you're working on into lots of different things. So just pieces that are flexible enough to be able to do that. Then, of course, we have all of our inventory of decor stuff. So you've got all of these kind of pieces that you can drop in. You've got all of these floor tiles that are, so this is like, a whole floor tile, which you can have like move and there's something underneath it. These are kind of like negative spaces. So if you want to remove a floor tile from an area, you can use some of these negative floor tiles. So they all kind of work together like that. Really helpful with Dungeondraft if you move into that. Other decor pieces that you can just drop in to create something interesting or just, break up continuity. Floor pits, these have no shadows around them, so they just drop right onto a floor and create, something where you could put a body or something at the bottom of it. Other kinds of floor pits, these are great. These just drop into any space. I don't really have some examples here. These just drop into any space and immediately create like a hole in the floor. So the way the edges and everything are designed, again, there's no shadows around them. You can drop them in, and you'll see in some of the maps here in a second how you can use those. These tend to be a little bit more kind of fungus type of floor pits. All of the blood pits, so these go well on any floor or combining with other assets to add sort of blood in them. And you've got a lot of catacomb decoration pieces. A lot of these are prefab together where you can drop them in and immediately have something interesting on one of your maps. You might end up playing maps just with some of these pieces, but just prefab stuff that, this has like a empty floor underneath it. You can put effects behind that. Just really helpful when you're designing maps. I've also got, of course, all the tombs, the corpses, the dead bodies that you'd find in a catacomb, more coffins. All of these are in brushes so that you can just brush them in. They automatically come with drop shadows. Of course, you can add those too when you're brushing them on. Lots of crates. I wanted more crates that you could like put in different configurations to create barriers and just tactically interesting maps. So you've got all these crates to be able to do that. Mortared bones, you find these in a lot of catacombs, just kind of walls and pillars and things with bones that are mortared in. Then of course you've got your loose humanoid skulls that you can really pile up and add to maps. Some equipment, all of your metal gates. Some of these are semi-transparent. We've got different perspectives on those depending on what you like. And we've got different stairs. These are for creating egress points and connecting rooms, stuff like that. All of your thrones with some different king and queen sort of death, and lots of ceramic urns. These just always have a place in maps, so you can use these. They're color neutral, so you can really colorize them just using regular tinting in Foundry, be able to add them to any kind of scene. Okay, then we get into our room templates. We basically took all of the large rooms and made templates out of them. This is a much larger scene where you can add hallways and stuff onto it. You may want to turn on the lights. You may also want to change the background from black to light so you can kind of see what dimensions you're working with. But these are, or you can just simply add some things to this room and you're basically ready to go. And I won't run through all of them, but you've got all of the major rooms that we've been looking at available as templates. And then you get into the scenes, and these scenes were just using the templates that you saw. So here's a scene, for example, the blood altar. You've got this blood altar in the middle, this kind of pool of blood. Here's the altar itself. We've got some blood components arrayed around the edges. Your players can explore things. You can put stuff in these little side rooms. They can fight their way through these different maps or these different rooms. You can see some of the skulls and blood that were splattered around this room here. It's very atmospheric, and of course just dropped in a simple stair, and that's their egress point into this map. Grave Robbers says, okay, let's take one of these large rooms and actually make a camp out of it. So we put some Grave Robbers in here. And presumably these Grave Robbers are going and looting these graves. By the way, a lot of these new pieces are interactable. All right, so just a really great map. You can add some enemies to it, and you've got just all this interactive stuff that I think your players are just going to love. Right? We've got some overhead tiles for these cobwebs. Just makes it very immersive. You know, your players can go underneath the cobwebs. So I think you'll have a lot of fun with these. We have some very large maps, this crypt crawl, right? Using all the same pieces, just added to these maps to change them around in different ways, but lots of things for your players to discover. This crypt crawl uses some of the new FX Master capabilities with regions. So we have regions that have some of these special effects, in this case, spores, but you can see other effects, like you've got these little light motes around this crypt here. So locked doors and things for your players to uncover, discover, and problem solve. This one uses a crumbled floor. You notice how I added the floor piece here, and then I added this region, the special region that uses, again, FX Master to create effects. So it gives you this like foggy, presumably massive drop, right? So your players have to problem solve how to get around. We've got treasure rooms and everything else that you would need to have a nice little explorable map. The Enchanted Room, Enchanted Catacomb, has these special rooms here. You've got these frozen skeletons with snow falling in this room inexplicably. You've got another room over here with some of these dancing motes and this skeleton knight that's sitting on this suspended stone platform. So, you know, certainly you can come in and tell your own stories, but just adding interesting things, some sort of corpse that's got this sort of magical enchantment around it. I recommend you come in here and you see how some of these are created. Just go to Token Magic Effects, Edit, and you can see there's like bloom effects and saturation adjustments and other things that just give you the ability to really engineer the visual stuff that you want to engineer. Another large crawl, just more of these rooms interconnected in ways that your players can discover and loot, and so you can tell the story here. A throne room, explorable, lots of tactical elements to have fun with. So I hope you guys like the 2D release. This was a lot of fun. I would play any of these if I was doing campaigns. They're just super flexible maps to throw into a campaign. With that, let's jump into the 3D release.
Hey everybody, Swift here again to talk about some more 3D stuff this month. We got another set of maps for you, some by myself, some by our lovely letters. And then we got another set of assets that are designed to go well with the camping set we had last month. So let's have a look at the maps we have today. First of all, this one here is Fort Forsaken, which is a bandit fort on an island in a lake surrounded by a forest, as you can see. It's a pretty straightforward situation here. We've got a small area of land. The actual extent of the map itself, you can see here, is up to these lines. Down in the water, they've put spikes around the island to deter people from landing. And then they've got this palisade wall around a sort of central camp area, various tents, a place to prepare food, and then a sort of drill square. This area over here. And in the back, we've got an ancient structure that probably used to be a barracks or something, but is currently being used by the higher ranking members of the bandit gang. This is a sort of blend between using an exterior map with terrain and an interior map with tiles. I've linked them together here just by using a little staircase thing sunk into the ground. And then I've also made the interior look like an interior using an invisible cuboid hanging out on top of it. Because what you can do with any random tile, say if I just create a new one over here, the Create Tile button, is if you go into the material of any random tile, there's Cast Shadow, and that can be on or off, and it doesn't really matter what it looks like. So you can make a tile completely invisible and have it still cast a shadow. Like for instance, if I remove this, you can see that the walls then start casting shadows from the sun, and it just kind of looks like this is actually some walls just kind of laid out. But if we put the tile back, that removes the shadows from the sun, and it looks like it's indoors. So there's a little trick for you. Anyway, speaking of tricks, I'd like to show you another one. So this is the nighttime version of the Forsaken map. So same deal. It is, of course, just at night. The place is very dark. Most of the illumination is from torches and so on. But the trick I'd like to talk about is the use of fog and background meshes. So in the background here, we've got some background trees. They're kind of hard to see because, you know, the fog blocks them. But these are just some, like, very low poly tree objects that we have in one of our monthly releases. So you put those around the outside of your map, and then you put some fog in. And then it means that they sort of fade into the background, and it looks more believably like they are quite distant. So that was something I kind of wanted to show people, I suppose. Just a notion that you should use fog in more situations than you might think, and you'll get some pretty cool results. Aside from that, the map itself is just the Forsaken map, but dark, which is quite nice. Because obviously, the players might be approaching this sort of place at night, which might be a good idea, depending on what their strategy is. Anyway, that's enough about this for. Let's move on. This one is the Wolf's Lair, which is the cave lair of a werewolf that has been staying here to hide from a nearby village. In the first chamber, we've got this roaring river of some sort of magically infused river. The bright glow of it is what's illuminating the place. Falling in's probably a bad idea, but there are a bunch of stones sticking up from the bottom of the riverbed here. So that's a nice little athletics challenge for your players there, getting across without falling in. Or, of course, without being attacked by whatever creatures that jump out of the river, which is probably going to happen. And then in the back, we have a more traditional lair situation. We've got more of that glowing magical water here, though it's not flowing, obviously. A sort of living sleeping area, made from the pelts of whatever creatures the werewolf's been eating, and then just a kind of pile of bones over here to represent the ones they've been eating. Overall, a fairly straightforward map. I think this challenge here is going to be a kind of interesting one. This is done using the scroll shader, so it's just a normal sort of water object, but you turn the scroll shader on and the texture starts moving in one direction. So you just turn the speed up and it makes it look like it's flowing. Very simple effect, that one. Anyway, let's have a little look at Lettuce's maps this month. This is one of those trademark Lettuce diorama-style maps, which is just this lovely little brick and wood house here, up on a glacier of some sort. Maybe looks like it's in a bit of a precarious location, but it's quite a moody kind of place, I think. We've got the stark sunlight coming in, the bright white ice fractured in all these straight lines here, and these little pieces over here are just sort of bobbing up and down in the water there to really give it a kind of more believable movement. Inside, of course, we do have a nice cozy interior, so presumably whoever the party are after are hiding out in there, or maybe it is the party who are doing the hiding. On this topic, we've got this map here, and we've got another variant of this I'd like to show. This is the Moonlit House in the North, which is the same scene, of course, but at night. So what we've done here is we've changed the colour of the sun to a kind of dark blue to make it seem more like a kind of full moon type situation, since you can still quite clearly see. And we've also done things like change this lantern to a glowing variant so that it looks more like it's lit. But then I think something that should be remembered is the use of shadows. Because what you can do with, so the sun casts shadows, but you can also make any light source also cast shadows. It is kind of expensive in terms of if you put many of them in a scene, it'll start to chug. But if you use it sparingly, you can get some really nice effects, like this column of light coming out of this door frame here. Just sort of scene made as a bit of a reminder, just to consider shadows when you're making a scene to see if you can make a small light that has a big impact just by using that sort of thing. Anyway, let's move on. The next one is also a lettuce map. And this one's a pretty cool one and a pretty esoteric one. This is Crash Landed. And what we've got here is, well, a very recent crash. This is one of the sort of sci-fi ships from one of our sets some months ago, and they've sort of created a divot in the terrain here with a bit of a trench leading up to it. And of course, loads and loads of fire, as any good crash should have. Pretty small scene, pretty straightforward. I can imagine this being a case where the party, or even maybe it's just one player, is crashing and having to escape the place before they are found, or the party are tracking down something that's crashed nearby, either to defeat whatever's inside it, or maybe to rescue it. Either way, a pretty interesting scene, I think. It's nice kind of making use of sci-fi stuff in situations that might normally be associated with fantasy, like this kind of magical-looking forest. Anyway, let's move on. This one's another lettuce map. This is the Sacred Tree, and this is similar to the sort of landing page maps that we had last month. It's a kind of more of a mood piece than a tactical map, though you could still have a fight on here if you wanted. We've got the small diorama, the forest surrounding, and then just the central area here, with the cushions for people sitting on and the flowers and magical lights sort of thing. Very much a aesthetic sort of map, I would say. So yeah, good for a landing page and that sort of thing. Overall, pretty cool. Let's have a little look at the next one. This map is called The Pit, and is a very straightforward one, as it is just a pit. Quite a large one, of course, with a ledge just above it. This would presumably be some sort of a 1v1 gladiatorial situation, or some kind of garbage pit that the party have either been thrown into or have ducked down into to hide. There's a staircase leading into the darkness below, and then, of course, the ledge above if they want to climb back out. Overall, a nice small-scale map. Something I think is definitely very valuable for a lot of different scenes. On the opposite end of the spectrum, there's the town square here, which is just a nice diorama here with a stone floor surface, with a few of our city buildings here. So these are the ones with interiors that we've got. Like we've got a tailor over here, we've got a herbalist, I believe, over there, and a smith. And then, of course, some things from some of our recent packs, like the carriage and the food and that sort of thing. This could link into the pit, depending on the nature of this well here, or it could just be used as a nice little urban environment for the party to explore, or for some sort of encounter to happen on. Overall, always good to see more urban-style maps. And this one's probably my favourite, Waiting for Sunday, which is another one of those diorama maps. Quite straightforward one here. We've got the classic shipwreck. Somebody's left out a sign. Not sure who they're expecting to see it, but anyway. And then they've set up the tent with the supplies they've had, and are presumably waiting. One of those very straightforward vibes kind of maps, I suppose. I don't know if you would have an encounter here, unless it is the players who are shipwrecked and they have to encounter the local fauna. But if you're running a campaign that's on a deserted island, I could see this being a very good kind of landing page type of map, since it very clearly communicates the kind of lost on a desert island vibe. Either way, though, very cool maps. Let's have a quick look at the props for this month. And here's the inventory scene for this month. This is the sort of mountain valley, I think, is what I'm calling it, set. It's a sort of quite chunky, large set that's designed to match in well with the camping set we had before. And so since it's kind of mountains focused, we've got a lot of a natural looking stuff. So we've got various trees, some of which are very, very large. A lot of differently shaped rocks, which are perfect for being mashed together to create all sorts of shapes. A few larger cliff pieces that are mostly just designed to kind of cover up gaps and fill in holes in the background there. And some ruins pieces as well, like doorways, walls, that sort of thing. Pillars of various states of disrepair, naturally. Got a few smaller pieces of foliage. Not as many itty-bitty ones that we normally would have. These are kind of bigger and chunkier. which I think is good, to be honest. Small boat, small cart, and then, of course, a whole bunch of standing stones. Some of them have glowing runes etched in them, so those will show up even at night. And then the other ones are just kind of large, quite precisely cut standing stones. Some of them with big holes in them, obviously. A lot of them cracked in some way or another. But you could use these to do things like build walls, of course, but I think they'd be better used to indicate kind of precursor civilizations, I suppose. Standing stones are a good, reliable standby for that sort of thing, as well as stuff like the altars in the ruins, of course. So we've got this nice chunky asset set, and then the maps from myself and Lettuce. As ever, I'd appreciate any sort of questions or comments down in the comments below or on our Discord, and I'll hand you back over.
Okay, Dungeondraft users. First off, there's actually 3 asset packs that were updated. Actually, one of them's new. It's the Catacomb asset pack. And then we've also updated 2 of the others. So check the easy download table to see everything that was updated. As far as the new stuff, we've got all of the Catacomb assets that you saw in the Foundry release, if you saw that piece, but lots of mummies, bodies. These are super interesting. All of these tiles, they're both negative and positive. So you can change where there's missing tiles, or you can fill in missing tiles or add missing tiles. It's really nice. Highly recommend those. You've got all the crates, the catacomb pieces that we've been talking about so much. You've got all of these different rooms, how they were built. All of those bodies, so the archers, the fighters, and knights, your blood spatters, these are all in the basic pack. So make sure you update that one if you want to get to these. And then these were all added to where their brethren are sitting in one of the other updated packs. And then you can come in here and see how these rooms were built. We heavily used all the new functionality where you can like turn objects into patterns and you can feather their edges. It really gives you so much design capability that I think you'll really, really enjoy it. But come in here and deconstruct how these different things were built and really get to understand how to use these different things together. If I turn off objects, I can see all these different patterns and how these patterns come together to engineer the environment that we want. You can see some of these negative tiles, how those were used. Really, really fascinating stuff. So you've got all of the rest of the rooms, and that's it. That gives you an idea of how to build them. You can come in there and customize them and make them your own. But I think you'll really enjoy this release, and I think you'll really enjoy just the level of quality that you can build with some of this stuff. And with that, let's close it out. Okay, gang, that's it. I hope you enjoyed this release. I hope you like what we're doing on the Foundry side. We have so much development on Foundry content, how we're delivering it, new tools that we're coming up with, things to make life easier for GMs. Of course, we're always looking at new modules and things like that we're excited about. So I hope if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel, like this video, add comments where you can. It's sort of the free and easy way to support what we're doing if you're not already a Patreon member. And of course, if you do support us on Patreon, we really appreciate it. It's because of you that we're able to give all of these things to the public, and it keeps us going, and it lets us continue to expand our tool set and the things that get us excited so that we can keep you guys excited as well. And with that, thanks everybody, and have fun making your maps.